Recording has started.
Your line. Again, I'd encourage you to type your name and email in the chat box. And I see a lot of people are joining, and thank you for doing that. You should have received 4 links in all of today's presentations. So if we somehow encounter a video problem, it would be a good idea to open that link as a backup. And that way you have the presentations in front of you. So if somehow you lose your video and you still have the audio, you can follow along with the presentations that are in the link. Of course, none of this would be possible without the sponsorship, and we greatly appreciate the support of the Standards and Trade Development Facility. We also recognize the great support from USDA and AID. With that, Ceci, if you can have the first set of slides up, please.
Can you see the slides?
Yes. And then can you go to slide number 4? Yes. So I would first like to welcome Catalina Polito, who's the Economic Affairs Officer with STDF. I hope you have received the agenda. And with that, I'd like to invite Catalina to make some opening remarks. And hopefully your mic is unmuted.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm here, Michael. Thanks.
Yes, I hear you.
Perfect. So thank you very much for the opportunity to deliver these welcoming remarks on behalf of the Standards and Trade Development Facility, the STDF. The STDF is a global partnership financed by bilateral donors. It was founded by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, the World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and the World Bank Group. Codex and the International Plant Protection Convention, IPPC, also actively contribute to our work. The STDF works with diverse partners involved in agriculture, health, trade, and development, including other international and regional organizations, developing country experts, and the private sector. APARI and IR4 are part of STDF's network. We know that trade in food and agricultural products offers a way for farmers, processors, and traders in developing countries to increase their incomes and to boost economic development. But despite the potential, there are many challenges. Limited capacity to meet food safety, animal and plant health requirements is often one of the major obstacles. The STDF aims to help developing countries to strengthen their sanitary and phytosanitary capacities. For this, the STDF provides grants for the preparation as well as for the implementation of technical assistance projects. And maybe if I can just stop and you can show the next slide, please. That way you can all see a little bit of what the STDF does. Perfect, thanks a lot. So our aim is to encourage compliance with international standards in the SPS area so that developing countries such as yours can gain and maintain access to international markets. Earlier this year, we launched our new STDF strategy for 2020-2024. It builds on the STDF's track record, but goes beyond by elaborating on how the STDF aims to deliver results and influence change based on its unique value proposition of convening and connecting, pilot and innovating, learning and disseminating, influencing and catalyzing. Many developing countries face challenges to meet pesticide maximum residue limits, MRLs. In fact, MRLs count high among trade concerns raised in the SPS committee at the WTO. In the past, the STDF funded 3 regional projects focused on building capacity to meet Codex MRLs for minor use crops, including 1 project in ASEAN, which achieved very good results. However, much more still needs to be done in order to identify and tool out new solutions to address pesticides-related issues affecting trade. This regional project engaged public and private sector stakeholders in Asia to test a new approach that combines non-residue producing biopesticides with conventional pesticides to reduce trade issues linked to non-compliance with MRLs. This regional project is important for the STDF for at least 4 main reasons. First, it tests an alternative approach to improve compliance with pesticide MRLs. It is based on close collaboration between government authorities in the participant countries, the private sector, and is expected to facilitate additional public-private partnerships. Third, it encourages cooperation, dialogue, and exchange within and across the ASEAN and South Asian regions. And finally, the results are likely to generate broader experiences and lessons of wider relevance and interest. Biopesticides, as you know, are growing interest to regulatory agencies, and work is advancing on this topic regionally and globally, such in ASEAN, the Codex Committee on Pesticides Residues, and the OECD. We are well aware that in a project like this, involving so many different stakeholders, there is a particular need to ensure that activities across different countries and involving diverse partners are effectively planned, implemented, and monitored. In addition, the current global crisis due to COVID-19 has also demonstrated the need for flexibility and adaptation, making use of new virtual tools as we're doing today, and as it was earlier explained by Michael. We are very pleased that APARI and IR4 were able to adapt and to promote ways to continue implementation despite the challenges. However, and more importantly, it is each one's enthusiasm, motivation, and commitment that will ensure a successful implementation of this project. So keep up the good work. Please know that from the STDF, we're open to hear you as participants in case you have any doubts, suggestions, or would like to highlight any area for improvement. As part of the project's internal governance, there is a steering committee which intends to be a platform to exchange and to timely discuss progress and areas for improvement. So do not hesitate to reach out to us if needed. Finally, I would like to thank everyone taking part of this workshop. Also, a special thanks to IR4 and APARI for organizing it and being in charge of implementation. The STDF is delighted to be able to contribute to this project, and we encourage you all to work in a concerted manner in order to achieve the expected results. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your comments, Catalina. Can we have the next slide, please? So, as was mentioned, USDA is one of our other partners, and I would really like to credit Jason Sandal, who developed the first STDF project involving capacity building and development of new Codex MRLs for enhancing trade. The work that was done was cooperation across ASEAN within the context of this project, and we're expanding efforts in Asia even beyond the original vision of this project. And this is by adding Pakistan. They are a very enthusiastic and communicative group, which we believe is essential for success. With that, I'm hoping that Ray Santella is on the line and can introduce, make opening remarks for welcoming the Pakistani group. And can we have the next slide, please? Ray, are you on?
Yes, Michael. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. This is Ray Santella, the agricultural counselor based in the American Embassy in Islamabad. I know this is we would rather have this type of workshop in person, but unfortunately, as Michael has said, these are unique times, and we're trying to move forward with what we can this time virtually. So I'd like to welcome everyone from the ASEAN countries as well as from South Asia, and of course our new group from Pakistan. We've been working with the Pakistan government for a while on adopting international SPS related issues. So we're happy that you've all been able to join this important workshop. I would like to say special thanks to Dr. Braverman as well as our colleagues from other organizations such as Deborah Hamilton, Eric Bernstein, as well as our colleagues from CABI and STDF, IR4, and of course our colleagues from USAID who have provided funds to help us bring these type of workshops together. It is these types of MRL issues that are frequently discussed in WTO SPS committee meetings, and it affects all types of agriculture related or agriculture and food trade related issues. So anything that we can do to help countries or participants improve their foundation for trade is what we're striving for. So hopefully all the participants in today's or the next couple of days workshop will be able to benefit from this pesticide residue mitigation activity. So if there's anything that we can do to help support or strengthen the bilateral partnership or multilateral partnership of all the participants here, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, we're here to help improve all of the SPS related issues and ensure that we all try to be in sync with Codex related standards. So again, we wish you a successful event, and please do not hesitate to call on us if you have any questions. Again, thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much, Ray. Can we have the next slide, please? All right. Dr. Ravi, you have time for your presentation. You have 10 minutes.
Dr. Ravi will be joining us shortly. He has some connectivity issue. He has lost connection with us.
Okay. All right. Well, I also want to, reflect on some of the comments that Catalina made concerning the previous STDF project. So, as she's aware, and as she mentioned, this was really a global project, not only involving ASEAN, but also involved Latin America and Africa. And similarly, on this project, we currently have this project within ASEAN and South Asia, but we also have applications going forward within STDF. And I see we have on the line Dr. Dennis Ndolo in South Africa. So we are also planning to expand this project to Africa, and also with Adriana Castaneda in Colombia. And so we invited them to this Inception workshop so that they can benefit from the communication and exchanges that are currently going on in this current workshop and learn from our activities and help them in their planning processes as we expand the project into their regions. Ravi, are you back on the line?
Yeah, I'm very much good.
All right. Well, you can begin then.
Okay. Thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone in this workshop. I lost the connection when Catalina just started speaking, and I got the connection when my turn came to speak. Well, that is a good coincidence. Well, I'll be briefing you about the project management and progress. Can I have the next slide, please? Before I tell you on where we are with the project, which started in February this year, I would like to just give you for those who missed our earlier workshop webinar about APARI, which is coordinating and managing the project along with IR4 and USDA and other partners who are the technical contributors in the project. APARI, as you know, is an apolitical regional organization which was established by FAO in 1990. And most of the national agriculture research system in Asia-Pacific region actually started APARI jointly under the banner of FAO. Next, please. And this PowerPoint sums up about APARI quite well. We have more than 80 members across the globe in about 35 countries. And what is important here is the kind of work we are doing. We actually work on strengthening agri-food research and innovation for sustainable agriculture development in Asia and Pacific. We work with all the partners who are APARI members. They are like from NARS, as I mentioned, international research organizations, higher education sector, sub-regional bodies, and other associations and foundations and so on. What is important in APARI is the area under which we work. We have 4 thematic areas where we work quite in sync with FAO on the matching mandates. And our areas are natural resource management, risk mitigation, inclusive development, where we have started work on pro-poor value chain, and on policy and advocacy on many issues of agriculture importance. So right now, this project we are talking is more under our thematic area of risk mitigation, which we are partnering with other organizations to really reach to the members in the region with the right kind of approach. Next. Now, the whole project actually, if you see technically, though Michael will be giving you a lot of details on the project objectives and work plan and all, if you see the whole project overall big objective is safe trade. And if you look at safe trade, how we can have safe trade, there is a multi-dimensionality of requirement for a safe trade. Look at the various pillars of environment, plant health, and food safety requirement. This project zooms one of the more than 30 areas which are directly or indirectly involved in safe trade. And the one we are zooming here is on the MRLs, as you all know, which is one of the most important reason for the rejections of the consignments in trade when there's a violation of the codex norms, and there are fixed MRLs which has to be respected. But how to detect MRL, how to fix an MRL, how to go ahead, that is where the whole project actually is focused on. It's a residue mitigation with biopesticide is another issue because of the MRL issues which are coming in safe trade. And then the project will deal on some other aspects of like microbial biopesticide manufacturing, and also on the regulatory harmonization or regulatory cooperation among members. So under the SPS agreement of WTO, we are here working with the compliance to the Codex norms. Next. Next, please. Yeah, just a glimpse of people who are joining first time in our workshop, the previous one. This project has 11 countries as members. Pakistan is a new baby which just joined recently, courtesy USDA. And then apart from that, we have countries from Southeast Asia and South Asia who are the members. And the partners in the project are CropLife Asia and USDA, as Michael mentioned, and IR4, where Michael himself is there. And he will explain to the benefit of many who may not know what is this IR4. And APARI, of course, which I am representing with my colleagues. The key responsibilities in the project of IR4 in conjunction with USDA and also involving lot of consultants who will be speaking today on various aspects of the technical issues of like good laboratory practice and so on. The role is technical coordination, technical workshops which will be arranged, meetings of technical nature, capacity building in lab and field, regulatory harmonization, reporting, and role of APARI is a bit unique, though when we conceived the project, we could see the strength and the possibilities of each of the organization. Here we have kept our role on project management because it is within the region. We have easy access to our people and our partners. Then on the functional capacity, this is something which APARI has started under the banner of FAO, under the Tropical Agriculture Platform. And this actually is something we are trying to blend along with technical capacity in the project to make technical capacity much more valuable. Knowledge management, which is a core strength of APARI, where we are also creating a communication plan and having a lot of things about the project on our website and so on. Then monitoring and evaluation, which is very crucial to see every 6 months where we are and how we are progressing and how the impact pathway is being addressed. Then the logistics, the financial management, and some administrative work related to signing of agreements and MOUs. Next. Next, yeah. The project started in February at a time when coronavirus also started spreading everywhere. So we were in a dilemma how to really move ahead, but we were not knowing that the virus will take such a dangerous shape in the coming months. We started online our project steering committee meeting. It was in February as the project was sanctioned, which was a very good meeting we had where we had a clear picture on the issues of biopesticide, need for local production, then imports. Then we talked about the disconnect between regulations and chemicals used in ASEAN and the lack of biopesticide registration mechanism. And the best output was FAO assured full support, being a member of steering committee. Then we had a one-on-one meeting with FAO, and we worked out how we are going to have the support of FAO at a crucial juncture where our outputs will have to take a proper shape. Next. Sorry. Then we had the previous one. The pre-workshop survey. This survey was done to assess the technical and the functional capacities at what stage they are. And we came out with nice outputs, which we shared in the pre-inception webinar, which we had in the week thereafter. But the survey results showed that good laboratory practice protocols were something which every partner, every project partner really wanted to have protocols, to have studies, to really work on it. And they also emphasized on the need of biopesticide manufacturing. And in case of functional skill, what came out important was the issues of problem solving both in the field and labs on the projects, analytics or the analysis of the part of the project, then also on the awareness on the policy changes like at the level of codex, and there were issues like how to engage farmers so that they use the pesticide properly, they start using the biopesticide, and so on. So we got some very good outputs which we shared in the pre-inception webinar. And this webinar, we really tried to have with partners who were involved in the project to be on the same page on the capacity development that is going to be taking place and the other aspects which the project will cover. And that is how the whole project actually began after this pre-inception webinar. In the meantime, we could not have a face-to-face workshop, inception workshop, which we were very much waiting for. And we have this online thing. But in the meantime, we developed our internal communication strategy, and we established our firmed up monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and learning plan, which actually provides a glance at different level of impact pathway from governance to inputs to outputs, outcome, impact, and so on, where each level is to be monitored at 6 monthly interval. Then we reviewed the MOUs to be signed and the KM strategy. All this will be developed, discussed tomorrow in another session by my PARI colleagues, next and the final one. So we can I have the last slide, please. So what activities which are planned for the rest of the year? We have a steering committee meeting tomorrow evening in their time, of course. Then some technical activities which will be within the year in quarter 3 and 4 by the experts who are going to speak today. So we have all the constraints of the coronavirus really to make it happen, especially the capacity building programs in the laboratory and all. But you will see with time how innovative we are, how we are really going to have it online. And when the opportunity will arise, we will complement and supplement with face-to-face interactions. With these few words, I would like to end here and thank you all of you for joining the workshop. And tomorrow we'll be having more discussion on the admin, finance, and other functional capacity part of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. So we are a little bit behind schedule, but maybe we can take one quick question. Anybody has one? All right, thank you again, Ravi. Sasi, can we have the next slide, please? All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to start my presentation. As everybody's aware, the title of this project is Asia Pesticide Residue Mitigation through the promotion of biopesticides and enhancement of trade opportunities. So really this is building upon the success of the first STDF project, whereby we developed new MRLs. We understood and encountered many situations in which there were existing MRLs that were difficult to meet, coupled with countries that were lesser developed, that did not have the analytical capabilities for some of the newer chemistries, so did not have the opportunity to develop new MRLs. So we needed an alternative method by which trade. So the idea came to try to enhance trade through reducing the residue problems and utilizing biopesticides at the end of the season to mitigate the residue problem of the conventional products. Next slide, please. So I personally work for IR4, Rutgers University in New Jersey. We are focused on developing pest management tool for specialty crops, primarily fruits and vegetables. We've been in existence since 1963, but more recently, we've increased our vision to international work because we realized that we were generating MRLs in the United States, but we did not necessarily have MRLs in other parts of the world. So we decided that we wanted to develop partnerships globally, and this is an important part of that effort. Next slide, please. So the overall goal of this regional project is to mitigate maximum residue limit and avoid export violations through the use of conventional pesticides, followed by the use of microbial-based biopesticides to control key pests at the end of the season. In consultation with researchers, extension, and commodity groups, crops of major commercial importance to most Asian countries have been selected, and these include chili pepper, greens, basil, dragon fruit, and rice. And this was primarily determined through our project planning grant. So, as I mentioned earlier, as Ravi was getting ready, we also have partnerships in South Africa, where we have a project planning grant was also provided by STDF, and we have narrowed down some of the target crops. And then in Latin America, we are just starting requesting a project planning grant, although we have some indications of some crops like passion fruit and coffee and some other crops that have some pesticide concerns that need mitigation. Next slide, please. Okay, so the objective is to increase the awareness of how the residues impact trade, and there will be three primary areas of focus. First of all, on residue mitigation with biopesticides, microbial biopesticide manufacturing, and then regulatory cooperation. So we're going to have a review of what our intentions on how to approach these areas through the lectures in today's workshop. Next slide, please. So I know a number of you have seen this slide, but for those who are new to this project, this is the overall idea or concept of the project. Next slide, please. So if you have a situation, can you go back, please? Yes, so if you have a situation where you have a product with a 7-day pre-harvest interval and 7 days of effective control, you might be at a proper MRL for your particular country. But if you want to export to a country that follows Codex or to the EU, for example, they may have a different MRL, which may be lower than that in your country. Well, we can overcome that problem by simply extending the time from application to harvest and allow the pesticide to degrade. However, that can open you up to resurgence of the pest. So the main concept of this project is to use the biopesticides at the end of the season, maintain that pest management while allowing the conventional pesticide to degrade. Next slide, please. So this is sort of a graphic of the process. So we are currently in the project initiation phase. We will start with a field phase of residue studies with multiple harvests in a decline study. We will then have an analytical phase whereby we analyze those samples. Depending on the results, we will enter the next phase, which involves biopesticide efficacy. Next slide, please. So phase 1 will involve multiple ingredient decline studies. So we will determine which active ingredients have residues that can be mitigated in a reasonable length of time. We may determine that there is some rapid decline and there's no need for mitigation. Perhaps the reason for the residue issues is really a farmer education issue. There may be an intermediate decline where there's a good chance for mitigation, or there may be a very long decline, and we may have to restrict the use of those products to very early season in a multi-stage mitigation approach. Next slide, please. So we have requested decline data from industry. We have received a little data that coincides with some of the active ingredients we're going to be involved with. We will also be depending on industry for supplying analytical standards and the test substances needed to be applied in the field. Next slide, please. So phase 2 will be a single ingredient decline study looking at the efficacy. So based on the first decline study in phase 1, this will help us to narrow down the critical timelines in the decline study and determine when we need to come in with the biopesticides to mitigate those residues. And then we can also monitor the efficacy of the biopesticides in this system. Next slide, please. So in the end, what we hope to end up with is a system whereby we can provide guidance depending on the target export market. So for example, if you had a product that was a conventional pesticides and your target market, for example, was Australia, if you use that product and try to harvest within 3 or 7 days, the data might be telling you that there is concern that you may exceed the MRL. If you were to harvest at 14 days, that's kind of a cautious area. You may have a problem. But if you extend out to 21 days or beyond, the data will be able to tell you whether or not it's reasonably safe to be able to use that extended PHI and still be able to export to Australia. Now, if you have a different market, maybe Korea, EU, USA, there may be a different amount of time that you have to wait until you can safely harvest your crop. Next slide, please. So we have developed team members for all of the countries involved in this project, and I will be going over the countries in a little while and their individual projects. So for each country, we have organized facility management, a study director, a field research director, a lab research director, quality assurance, and then either an entomologist or pathologist to do the efficacy evaluations. Next slide, please. So depending on the particular country's interest, we have developed a table of of key products of concern for that particular crop. So for chili pepper, this study will involve Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Indonesia. Next slide, please. For greens, this project will involve Bangladesh and Nepal. For basil, the countries involved will be Laos and Cambodia. Next slide, please. And then for dragon fruit, this will involve Vietnam. And rice will be the crop of interest in Cambodia. As was mentioned, Pakistan has been added to the group, and the final crop that they will be working on has not been finalized, but there's some initial indications that they have interest in rice or possibly chili pepper. And we'll be working through that issue. Thank you. Next slide, please. So since we're going to be doing multiple active ingredients such as imidacloprid, fipronil, methomyl, diazinon, etc., a number of different active ingredients simultaneously in a decline study, we have to know whether or not they are chemically compatible. Next slide, please. So one of the first things we're doing, or we have initiated, is to determine whether or not these pesticides can be mixed together. And Dr. Ngan will be making presentation number 7 later today. Will be explaining the work he's been starting on the physical chemical compatibility testing. Next slide, please. We also have challenges in the fact that different countries may have different analytical equipment. So we're looking into the combination of which analytical equipment and which active ingredients will match. And Dr. Wayne Jiang will be talking about that in presentation number 5, which will immediately be following my presentation on lab training and equipment. And Dr. Wu will also be talking about potential analytical interferences. Next slide, please. So as was mentioned, we have a number of different parts of this project. So here we are at the Inception workshop. A number of countries are involved, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, and Singapore. So for those of the countries that are highlighted in white, those were ones that had active projects in the first STDF project. Those in yellow are some of the newer countries. So we're going to be taking a team approach in this project in a train-the-trainer type situation, where Singapore and Thailand is going to be assisting in some of the laboratory training, and Malaysia will be actively involved in some of the field training. And so we will be able to learn off of their experiences. In fact, in presentation number 7, Dr. Ngan will be talking about some of his experiences out of the first STDF project. So some of the activities that we will have are GLP capacity building, both in the lab and the field. Then we will follow by the actual mitigation studies, the biopesticide manufacturing and development, and that will be discussed in presentation number 8 by Dr. Stefan Juronsky, and followed by biopesticide regulatory harmonization. That will be led by Thomas Jackal, and he will be making presentation 9 later today. And then finally, we will have the results and dissemination and planning. Next slide, please. So in addition to today's Inception workshop, we will have virtual group lab training on August 10th through 14th, and virtual field group training August 25th and 26th. I've already sent out a link for the group lab training, and a subsequent link will be sent out for the group field training. Next slide, please. So just quickly going through some of the work plan, as was mentioned by Ravi, we delayed our initial Inception workshop, and now we are already in August, so that has been moved forward as indicated by that blue arrow. We've held one steering committee meeting, and we are going to be holding a second. We have recently completed the first report to STDF, and I guess Ravi will maybe mention whether or not, I don't know if that has been forwarded to STDF. Ravi? Well, maybe you're on mute, so maybe we'll just go to the next slide. All right. Going further into the work plan, we will have a follow-up and direct oversight on field and laboratory activities. As was mentioned, I will be involved with that, as well as Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. This will hopefully start in February of 2021, and then it will continue on as needed through 2022. We are hoping that can you go back, please? For activity 1.4, then we will start to generate the decline data. For those countries who have been in the first STDF, they don't really need the field and lab training, so they will be able to move forward earlier in the process. And then hopefully other countries, some of the newer countries, can start to join generating the data starting in about March of 2021. Next slide, please. Microbial manufacturing. This will be held in early 2021. Again, all of these are subject to coronavirus, and we will make adjustments on these as needed. Next slide, please. So this has been changed slightly from our original plan. The regulatory harmonization will be led by Thomas Jackal, and that's going to be moved forward to approximately June, July 2021, and Dr. Jackal will be able to comment on that during his presentation. Next slide, please. And then we will have a final meeting to discuss the results, and then develop the plan on extension efforts to disseminate this information. Next slide, please. All right, well, that concludes my presentation. Again, we're a little bit behind schedule, but we've caught up a little bit. So maybe we have time for one quick question or any comments.
Michael, there is a comment by Mr. Ula in the chat box.
Okay, I'll see if I can bring that up. The project is primarily for pesticide residue mitigation, so I want to learn about entomopathogenic nematodes which control thrips, pupa larvae, some vine weevils. This is released by copper. If it can be so used, or the pesticides will be reduced. What can you say about it? Okay, so really we are potentially using any type of biopesticide, including entomopathogenic nematodes. That could be an option, depending on what the target pest is. So if we have a target pest present, such as thrips, and we have an entomopathogenic nematode, which is available for controlling that pest, that can be an option in a mitigation system. Thank you for your question. Did somebody else Stefan, you wanted to add some additional comments? Can Stefan's line be unmuted?
Yeah, can people hear me?
If you can speak up a little louder, that would help.
Oh, okay. Hello. Okay, just a few comments. The focus of the biopesticide is more on the fungi for a number of reasons. I might get into that. However, certainly entomogenous nematodes, viruses, and bacteria are not out of the question. It's just that within the given restrictions, if you will, time restrictions of the training program, the focus will be on fungi. However, nematode production can be done on a local basis. I've seen this in Ecuador, and I have guidance actually on how farmers can produce their own nematodes. And certainly this can be discussed perhaps outside of the formal sessions. The same thing can be true for the viruses. Some of the viruses are particularly good against some of the lepidopteran pests, but they have to be grown in vivo, which means within the insect. It is possible, and it has been done in developing countries, and we can talk about that. However, the focus of the biopesticide training, again, for a number of reasons, is really going to be on the fungi. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan. So I think the well, first of all, yes, what you mentioned, Stefan, is correct. Our general mission within the manufacturing and development phase is based on fungi. However, I think the question perhaps was in the mitigation studies themselves, whether or not entomopathogenic nematodes can be used as one of the mitigation tools. And so in that regard, the answer is yes. Are we going to have training specifically on development of entomopathogenic nematodes? As Stefan mentioned, I think the answer to that is probably not. But they can be an option during the mitigation project itself. So I hope that question was answered.
May I comment on that, please?
Yes, just quickly.
Yeah, regarding the question, well, it's not only a technical or academical question whether there is this or that pathogen or tool available. It's a matter of the business, whether in a certain country the business case can be made to introduce such a product, you know. So I think it's also a matter of whether there is a private sector interest, whether this or that product is available or can be made available in any country you're talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, what was your name so everybody can know who made the comment?
Thomas was speaking. Thomas Jekyll, who I will
call later okay.
On. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So we have Wayne Jiang on the line. So we can forward the slides to his opening slide. All right, Wayne, yes. You have the floor.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Yeah, good morning, good evening. Well, we are in East. I mean, they are in the U.S. East Coast time zone, so it's early morning here. My name is Wayne Jiang. I work for the IR4 project at Michigan State University. Well, I have been doing lab training, GOP training in Asia, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and in Latin America. I'm quite sure a lot of people know me, but probably a lot of people don't know me. So I'm just go through this quickly because next week will be the lab training. What I'm going to say something, then I'll leave some time for Dr. Wu to spend time on the equipment. Yeah, so I'm going to do a quick overview about next week's lab training. Next slide, please. Okay, the content, well, today, as I just said, there will be the lab training overview, then there will be the lab equipment. Next slide, please. Okay, the dates, as Michael just mentioned, the next week from Monday through Friday, there will be 5 sessions, and I am thinking about 3 hours in the early morning here in the US, and probably in Asia that will be sometime in the afternoon or maybe early evening. We will have about a 10 minutes break in between, so that will be two sessions. I mean, 2 times 1.5 hour each session. Okay, next slide, please. For the lab training, the first part, we're going to do mostly about the good laboratory practice, which I have done quite a lot in the past. I visited, let's say, Asian countries. I visited Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia. But I also visit Vietnam, but that's not for this purpose. Yeah, many of you already went through my trainings, but this time we got a lot of new countries. So I wish when the virus is going down and getting controlled, I have chance to visit those countries so I can do the lab trainings there. So the details would be the protocol. We're gonna spend time on the lab portion of the protocol. I know Michael will be focusing on the field part. So we're gonna read the protocol using IR4 protocol as model, as the example, and what lab needs to pay attention to, where the major thing is, for example, the method and the detailed requirement for the specific projects. We will also go through the SOPs, and we will do other related like amendment and the deviations, those documents. Okay, the details in the laboratory, we will talk about samples, the sample shipping and sample receipt, sample grinding. Grinding is one of the key part because each country may have different equipment and different experience, especially when we are talking about the overall, we need to follow the requirement for the good laboratory practice, follow the protocol requirement. So that's something we will spend time talking about this grinding, the capacity, the procedure, and what we need to do if we have bigger sized samples, something like that. Sample storage and disposal. So storage would be another key point we need to spend time on. So that's depends on the details. We talk about that later. We will go through some analytical reference substance. and we will go through the instrument analysis, data review sort of things. The instrument, here's the thing, because mostly we really prefer to use advanced instrumentation such as LC, MS. Most modern methodology is using this equipment that makes the life easier for everyone, and also make the method very standard method everyone can follow easily. Of course, depends on the sample matrices, depends on the availability of the instrument. Things may be complicated within each country, and also when we are really doing the analysis, the instrumentation may be different. And for example, if the lab has only GCMS, and something may be different. Well, if it is different matrices, this instrument may not work very well. So Dr. Wu will spend some time on that, but I will spend some time on the method and the instrument in the training as well. The next thing may be the data review and QC. I'm not going to talk about QA in the training. This is quite a big part about the lab part, the lab analysis part. Most people are doing that very well. They know the chemistry, they know how to analyze the samples. But when we are talking about the GLP requirement, the data, the documentation would be a very a big portion for. I will say it's quite a lot of work there. A lot of people may not realize. I went through the training in different countries. That could be one of the biggest weakness. So that part we will spend some time to talk about the documentation, data review, and the laboratory quality control. So that's some kind of thing we need to be focusing on, and also each level, each lab will be at the different levels. For example, the labs I trained, I'm quite confident they are good, and they have been doing this for quite a while. In the past 4 or 5 years now, and I'm quite sure they can train new labs if they are feeling comfortable doing so. And but for some new areas or with the new countries, I really like to visit those countries. So that's some kind of a little bit of details we can talk about later. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we're going to talk about other things. For example, freezers, temperature monitoring. We know this is very important for those samples. Freezer is one of the biggest thing we need to pay attention to. We can do a very simple chemistry, as first year, second year chemistry, do the calculation. So this is universal issue everywhere, because the monitoring system so far I visited is quite challenging, because each lab may have different system. So there are some good things, because we got a lot of data there, especially using data logs. But for some other countries, the freezers are not so consistent. If there's a power failure or something, so we do need some kind of a reliable temperature monitoring system there in these labs. So we will go through that as well. The grinders, that's a biggest difference, I think, in the laboratories, because some labs have very good, very big-sized grinders can meet all the requirement. Some of them may be using like they can put like 20, 25 liters of samples in there without any issue. But the other lab I worked with, they may use the household size. That's kind of a blender doing the work, which can only put in probably about half pound, 1 pound of sample. So with dry ice in there, it will be very difficult for the lab to do the work. I talked to Michael about the grinders. I really prefer some grinders such as a robot cube, the size like 10 liters will be good enough for most of our work, because when we have the samples there, put the dry ice in there, it will eat up the volume easily up to like 6-7 liters without any cushion there. That will be difficult to do. Otherwise, the lab has to do multiple batches. Will be difficult for them to keep the sample homogeneous. So that's some kind of a work. That's also a challenge, because these standardized grinders like a robot cube or Hobart food choppers may not be available in some countries, because there's a lot of issues there. I went to different countries, but that's some kind of thing we always talk about. But we will see. I did not go to the new labs. Probably we will have some kind of a lab group discussion about the grinders, the freezers later. So that's one of the things we need to work on. Then the next will be a little bit easier, because we use the pipettes, shakers, all those lab equipment. For example, solid phase extraction, SPE. So that's pretty standard everywhere. When we use most likely we will be using the catcher's method to do the work, which is probably used almost everywhere, except that there are some special requirement. For example, sometimes US EPA may have very restricted requirement on some projects. We may not be able to use the catcher's method. Otherwise, that will be quite extensively used all over the world. So we are aiming at using the catcher's method to do the work. Instrumentation, we know it depends on the country. So that will be a little bit difficult for us to tell. This time I will send some I don't know, survey or maybe a discussion in the training, to the discussion to see what instrument in each lab and which lab will be doing which work. So the general requirement is LC-MS-MS. So if we have this, that will be a little bit easier for almost all the projects we can do in this program. Next slide, please. Okay, well, this is the list about Michael just went through the countries doing the project and may not be updated. This is the information I collected. I'm not going to talk about the instrument, its work or its not work for the instrument. I will leave this for Dr. Wu to talk about details. Okay, next slide, please. Well, I did a very, based on my experience, based on previous communications with Michael and other people, I put some question marks there and some other things there. I know some countries, they do have LC-MS-MS, which on the first column, and for other places, they may or may not. So I put a question marks there. We need to fill up this form when we do the training. So we will work on the method accordingly. Maybe when I visit those countries, we can work on a specific method with the instrumentation they have in those labs. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, well, this is a little bit example. So we talk about the requirement, or we talk about the definitions for each of the trainings. For example, we talk about the dates, we talk about the definitions. So it depends on which protocol or which the government requirement, for example, GOP or other requirement we use. Basically, these may have different terms, but they have very specific definitions there. For example, if we say in the protocol, we call that the study initiation date versus something experimental start date versus something called experimental starting date. So they may mean different things, but if we only follow one standard, one requirement, that will make everything much easier. So we don't have to deal with those different definitions, something like, is this a starting or start point, or this is initiation date, something like that. So I'm working with EPA, FIFRA, GLP, EPA GLP. So I know this is equivalent to OECD or other countries' GLP requirements, but I'm just using that so we know we are talking about the same thing. Okay, next slide, please. The same thing as other similar terms there. I'm just using those definitions as an example. For example, here, a study completion date. So based on the EPA GLP, it's just when the final report is signed by the study director, but it could be other different dates there. So experimental termination date, experimental completion date, something like that. So we will go through this, but it does not mean you have to know, you have to understand everything. If we just follow the EPA GLP, which I will spend most time on the GLP training portion. So that makes things a little bit easier for everyone. So we don't have to worry about the differences or some different definition, something we don't have to deal with. So we can focus on the lab analysis and the GLP. Next slide, please. I think I used almost like 17, 18 minutes. Is there any questions for the lab we will be doing? Yeah, I know quite a lot of lab people in Southeast Asia there, and looking forward to meeting you in the training as well as the face-to-face training later. Okay. Okay, next slide, please.
So, Wayne, there was a comment in the chat box from Santi Kongmeni that in Laos they have LCMSMS and GCMS.
If we use LCMSMS, basically I'm quite confident we can do almost all the work in this project. So so I think that, well, we don't need to mention anything about the GCMS unless we don't have the access to the LCMSMS. So my answer is yes, that's great. So we can do the work in Laos.
All right. Thank you very much, Wayne. So,
thank you.
Dr. Wu, are you on the line?
Yeah, okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Sasi, can you forward the slides, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we are here. Yeah. Okay. Good morning for the friends in US, and good evening for our colleagues in Asia. Very nice to join you for this visual session talking about these STD projects. I'm Wu. Actually, I look after this department called Food Safety Monitoring and Forensics Department. This is under National Center for Food Science, Singapore Food Agency. Before I start, I just want to express my appreciation for, I think, quite a few agencies. We have USDA, IR4, and also the WTO STD-F. I think for many of us from ASEAN country, this is almost like a STD-F phase 2, because some years back we have this STD-F ASEAN pilot project for generating the residual data for supporting the Codex MIL setting. So that project is, to me, it is very, very successful. I think many countries in ASEAN actually we benefit. Yeah, we learn really a lot. So I look forward to participate this the new phase of collaboration. Now I understand this project opened up to a lot more country all over the world. That's very good. So let's start. Basically, I will just have a few minutes try to introduce my own agency, and then I'll go to the topics we talk about based on the kind of proposal from different countries. What kind of consideration will be for the equipment or some of the detection technique. Yeah, can we go to the next one? Yeah. Just now I mentioned I come from the National Center for Food Science. This is under Singapore Food Agency. Basically, this center, it is the scientific arm of our agency. The core job is to basically we're doing a lot of testing to produce scientific evidence to support the agency's role as the National Food Safety Regulatory Authority. We do tests and we do a lot of the risk assessment, and there's also some applied research to deal with the emerging food safety issue. Okay, go next. Yeah, our center actually there's quite a lot of this recognition internationally and also regionally. Currently, we hold this title. The left-hand side, you see, we are the WHO Collaborating Center for Food Contamination Monitoring. This for a lot of friends, if you know the Codex, you know a lot of the food safety standard actually is based on the monitoring data collected by the member countries. So we are one of the center actually contribute a lot, and we do a lot of capacity building, including some kind of food safety or food poisoning issue in the developing country. WHO will approach us to find some solution and roll out some training like that. The one in the middle, we also, this center, we are also the OIE Collaborating Center for Food Safety. If you don't know, OIE actually is a kind of French, the abbreviation of the French words actually it stands for World Organization for Animal Health. Yeah, within the region, in ASEAN, so far we have a total of 10 ASEAN Food Reference Laboratory. Actually, 4 out of these 10, it is in our center in Singapore. This includes the 4 areas so far: pesticide residue, mycotoxin, environmental contaminants, marine biotoxin, and scambotoxin. I think part of the reason why Singapore is here, it is because I think Dr. for the moment, we have quite a few years of collaboration. We actually we are serving that at the ASEAN reference laboratory role for quite many years. So there was some earlier thinking if some of the training may take place in Singapore. I think now because of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we have to replan a lot of things. Yeah, we will see how. But I think Michael, we're talking about the training will be in Thailand, right?
Well, when and if we have group training, the current plan is to have it in Thailand with Prachatipat and Thai Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
We will see what COVID allows us to do.
Yeah. So we will see what eventually how we can contribute for this part. Can we go to the next one? Yeah, I'm really go to this project. Just now, Dr. Braverman actually show there's 4 projects, got a list of pesticide. So in terms of the what method we're going to use, there's a consideration. Basically, it is a kind of what kind of separation we're going to use. Whether this is a gas-phase, a kind of compound, or we have to use the liquid phase kind of separation. So later we'll go to a bit more detail. Of course, once we go to the decide on the phase separation part, the detection technique, just now Dr. Jiang also mentioned this part. The detection technique also will detect the analytical performance of our residual test method. Let's go to the next one. Yes, this one, the first one is we try to do the residual mitigation study on the chili pepper. The 4 countries are going to participate in this project. So there's a long list of the pesticide showing here. When I look at it, basically, if we go to LC triple quad, I think we can cover all this list. That if it is in some country, we end up only have the gas phase, then we are talking about we can only cover a shorter list of the pesticide. And there's I think I put a few star. There was in the previous discussion, we have some understanding the certain compound may be subject to the restriction internationally. We might need to further discuss whether we want to include the compound in. For example, I think I put the star there for fipronil. Fipronil, it is in terms of the risk assessment, the dietary calculation, intake calculation, we know the ADI and the ARFD, whether it's a chronic toxicity or the acute toxicity, the actual limit is very low. It means the food safety kind of margin, when we use this kind of pesticide, will end up, the safety margin, it is very, very low. So the control, at which stage you try to introduce the biopesticide will become very critical. And also it means in most of the country, our trade partner, the OECD country, basically the limit was set at 0.01 ppm. It will bring some the standard MIL standard compliance issue. That's maybe we want to later the participating country want to kind of think about this part. I think Mesomio, I understand that some country, Thailand, I think we have our Thailand colleagues joining the meeting. Since there's some restriction, it's a ban already in some country. Internationally, this compound is under the review in Codex, so the down the road also is a bit tricky. The pro cross, this compound is a kind of fungicide. So whether it's relevant to our project, I think we have some email communication for this part. Michael, you have some comments for this?
Yeah, so this was our original list. And as you point out, there are some restrictions in some countries. Yeah, perchloraz will be off of the list. In addition to the ones you have starred, in some countries, acephate and chlorpyrifos are also banned within specific countries. So we will not be investigating those within those countries. So we will have sort of a core of some active ingredients that are common across all 4 countries, and then there are some compounds that will not be done in other countries, because we certainly do not want to promote the use of products that are banned within any country.
Yeah, Chile, I think there's for fipronil, definitely there's a no registered use in vast majority of countries, so you were subject to 0.01 that cannot default MIL. So there will be some treat disruption issue. Can we go to the next project? This one is the certain vegetable. Yeah, so we have 2 countries, Bangladesh and Nepal. It's proposed this one. We have 3 compounds. In this case, similarly, if we have the LC triple quad, it can cover all the 3 compounds. The GC gas phase, we can't do the residual test for imidacloprid. Yeah, unfortunately. So once you go to the gas phase, there's some kind of restriction because this is a non-volatile compound. And the next project is the Biopesticides. This is, I think, proposed by Cambodia and Laos. In terms of the testing, residual testing, these 2 compounds is perfect for GC triple quad and GCMS. LC, I think likely still quite okay. My own experience, it is cypromethrin may not be so sensitive. Yeah, of course, the cypromethrin being a phosphate pesticide, the MIL usually is not so low. That may be still okay if we use the LC MS. Okay, can we go to the next one? There's a 2.
Yeah, if you could wrap it up, please.
Yes. Yeah. Dragon fruit is a proposal from Vietnam. There's 3 compounds. These are a very nice one. It's just both GC and LC can be done. Yeah. The final one is from Cambodia, cyclozole. This one is similarly, based on our experience, it can be done easily by both GC and LC. Maybe the last one, I want to make some comments about the kind of testing technique we can have. Can we go to the next slides? Yeah, so once you decide on the whether it's a gas phase or a liquid phase, you still have the choice for different detection technique. Generally, if we look at the first project like that, you got the long list of the pesticide. Generally, the GC triple quad will give you much better performance. The second one choice will be GCMS. Starting from the GCMS, we will lose some sensitivity. So when we talk about, we try to cover fipronil, I think there will be quite a lot of difficulty. If we further go to some selective detector, not MS, I think the selectivity and sensitivity will suffer some more. It means once you go to this kind of technique, there will be a lot of sample preparation the extraction, cleanup, enrichment, that's the procedure will be lengthy. Of course, the last one, GCFID, basically it cannot be used for residual test. When it comes to the liquid phase detection, I think nowadays we are talking already the LC triple quad. This one will cover quite wide range of compound. Only certain type of pesticides, really the GC gas phase amenable, then you can do. Otherwise, vast majority of the pesticides can be done. If we go to lower end, the single quad, the sensitivity definitely will lose at least one order of magnitude. Further, this you have some selective that the spectrometric kind of detector, the performance will even further lower. So basically, it is if we have the triple quad type of the test equipment, the sample prep will become very straightforward. So actually, in my lab, a lot of the sample we are not doing residual testing. We do a lot of input control for MIL compliance. So nowadays with the triple quad, we are doing very crude extract. Then we do the dilution that is enough for us to scan a few hundred pesticides on a daily basis. Yeah, for the my general comment, it is at the early stage, as I understand, Michael have this plan. We try to do some decline to see which one will decline faster. Then we will further select the pesticide to try to do the further study. I think in the early stage, when we try to cover many, then I think the triple quad, either GC triple quad or LC triple quad, is strongly preferred for our work. Yeah, I think that is about the sharing I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit behind schedule, so we will go forward to the next presentation. Nan from Marty will be making the next presentation. We will skip over this and please go forward to Nan's presentation. Thank you. Nan, are you on the line? Hello, Nan?
Dr. Braverman, Dr. Ngan is having a problem with his PC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Shahid. So maybe can we forward to the next slide? So this is the presentation that Nan has forwarded. I will do my best to try to go over this presentation. By all means, Shahid or Nan, if you know that Nan is coming online, please interrupt me and let us know so that we can transfer Nan to be able to cover this material. Can we have the next slide, please? So again, this is not my presentation, but I will try to cover it as best as I can. So his intention is to cover the field training experiences and also chemical compatibility. Next slide, please. So this is the STDF screenshot of the STDF website. This was the first STDF project that Catalina and I and others have mentioned. So the Malaysian group was part of that. Next slide, please. So in this first project, it was also sponsored by STDF. and coordinated by USDA and technically coordinated by IR4. So I headed the field aspects of the training, and Dr. Wayne handled the laboratory training. The funding and organization was handled through the ASEAN Secretary, specifically within Malaysia. They had a project on pyroproxyfen mango. Marty themselves did a project involving 6 field trials. Part of that was also analyzed in Dr. Wu's lab in Singapore. In addition, they were part of another trial, or another study, I should say, involving pyroproxyfen papaya, which was combined a combination of field trials from Malaysia, Brunei, and the Philippines. And Malaysia had 3 field trials, and they also analyzed Brunei samples. Philippines had analyzed their own samples as well. Next slide, please. So, as was mentioned, I conducted hands-on training with the group there in Malaysia. I think perhaps Nan has joined the call. Are you on the line now? If he's online, can somebody unmute him? Okay. So Nan, if somehow you are online and you get unmuted, by all means, please interrupt me. All right, so we held a field training here. You can see the strip of tape alongside the mango field. So we use this as an indication of the area, the length to calibrate for walking speed. Next slide, please. So some of the training included the field measurements, calibration, walking speed, the actual application, harvesting or sampling, and then also they shipped some of their samples to the laboratory in Singapore. And they also had a quality assurance present in the field phase of the supervised residue trials. Next slide, please. So, again, these are not my words. Dr. Nan is claiming here, or is stating, I should say, that the exposure to conducting the supervised residue field trials involve good laboratory practices, and they learn how to record the field measurement data. They also were enabled to develop network and continuous collaboration with international partners. Nan, are you on the line? All right, I will keep checking because you are far more qualified to handle your presentation than I am. But in the interim, next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, one of the aspects of the trials that we're going to be undertaking will be the combination of multiple chemicals simultaneously in a multi-residue decline study. So we have to know whether or not there's going to be any adverse reactions. In other words, when we mix these chemicals, are some of them going to potentially precipitate or cause any problems in the sprayer? Next slide, please. So these are, again, just a list of the countries and the active ingredients that they are going to be involved in. Some of them you can see that it says no test. Okay, so for example, for basil, we know that already exists a premix of chlorpyrifos and cypermethrin, so there's no issue there. Tricyclazole on rice, there's only one compound, so there's no need for a multiple combination decline study. Next slide, please. So this is the procedure that they're using in Malaysia to do the testing. Shahid, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Would you like to cover this particular topic?
Okay. Actually, this is the procedure we did for the compatibility test. Okay. I don't think I will go through all of it, but this is the one that we use. Actually, we have about another observation. Day 14, I think next week. Yeah.
Okay. Next slide, please. And then Shahid, I don't know if you have any. Maybe you can cover this material as well.
Yes, sure. Okay. And then we evaluate the compatibility of the mixture. We observe about 5 things there. First is color changes in the solution, and then we have the exothermic effect, whether the mixture is become hot. And then we also look for the precipitation, and then we also filtered some solid after the mixture, and then we also observe the phytotoxic effect of the mixture. Okay, for the phytotoxic effect, after we mix the mixture, we spray on the grass, and then we do some observation whether there is a phytotoxic or not. Next slide, please. Okay, this is some of the picture that we use during the group 1. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the group 2. Next slide, please. Okay, as you can see, when this is the example for group 2, we observe no precipitation occurred after the mixture. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the compatibility for the group 4 mixture. This is composed of propiconazole, hexaconazole, and metalaxyl. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, there is some, I would not say it is not precipitation, but it is more of non-dissolved formulation. Because when we add the first formulation, so there is some kind of residue of the formulation left. It is not a precipitation after mixture. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then we also filtered this onto the sieve. Okay, okay, next slide. Okay, from the product mixing test, we found that the pesticides were compatible. Okay, we observed no exothermic effect or precipitation or filter solid for group 1 and group 2. But for group 4, excluding metalaxyl, the rest of the pesticides were compatible. For the metalaxyl, as you can see from the previous slide, you can see the metalaxyl which is in WP, wettable powder formulation, there is a kind of, I would say, uh, precipitation or undissolved formulation in the mixture. Okay, next slide. Okay, as you can see, this is the some of the picture for the phytotoxic effect observation. This is at day 3 after application. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the phototoxic effect observation at day 7 after application. Okay, as we can see, we observe there is no phytotoxic effect on the grass that we spray after the mixture. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the progress of this phytotoxic observation, there is no phytotoxic effect for all groups up to 7 days. The last observation will be on 10 August, which is next Monday. Okay, next slide, please. So I would like to thank to Dr. Braverman for the guide, and then for Mr. Azhar for he's the one performed the mixture. Okay, and he's the one who did the field trial before, and then also to Miss Jamalia, which is our QA during our last GLP application. She's also involved during the compatibility test. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for filling in. Can we go back to the last slide, please? Yes, right there. So I also want to give credit here. So if you see this slide here, the gentleman all the way to the left side holding his hat, that is Dr. Ngan. His apologies that he's having some problems with his computer. So we thank him very much for all his hard work in the first STDF project, and also for all the time he put into preparing this presentation. So thank you, Dr. Ngan. Also, thank you again, Shahid. So if you see this slide, Shahid, he was the person who was just recently talking about the compatibility testing. So many thanks to all of you. All right. Well, that concludes our first session. We now have a 10-minute break. And in that time, we will be...
10-minute break.
We will be loading the next presentation with Dr. Stefan Juransky. So if we can make it a very quick 10-minute break, and if Stefan can be ready as soon as possible, we would appreciate that. All right? So we are now temporarily on break. And Sasi, if you can bring up Stefan's presentation, which is the part 3 group. Thank you. So we'll just leave it on this slide for now, and we will come back at about 9 more minutes. So while we're on break, does anybody have any questions about any of the previous presentations?
Yeah, Michael. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this Dr. Wu?
Yeah. I just want to ask, internationally, when it comes to this compatibility test, do we have some kind of SOP? Won't say when you talk about compatibility, we need to kind of check after this mixing